Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ben Wilkes. I'm the program manager at the TomTom Foundation, and I'm so excited to welcome you here today for a special program called Community Designed Public Spaces that we're so proud and excited to share with you in partnership with the Botanical Garden of the Piedmont. We hope today will be a chance to learn about and contribute to the public use of this beautiful and innovative space in our community. The program will be broken into 3 different portions. We'll begin with the executive director of the garden, Jill Trischman-Marks, sharing a little bit about the project through some images. We'll then jump into the main portion of the program, which is a panel conversation with some of the folks who have been involved in the design and planned use of the garden. And then finally, we'll give you an opportunity to contribute by gathering in some small groups just for a few short minutes. We'll have a little note-taking device that you can use to then submit your ideas at the close of the program. So without much further ado, I will introduce Jill Trischman-Marks. She's a landscape architect with almost 30 years of experience in the Central Virginia area. After several years on the Botanical Garden of the Piedmont Board of Directors, Jill retired her private practice and is now the executive director, and she had it be noted, chief cheerleader for the garden project. So Jill, I'll hand things over to you.
Thank you so much, Ben, for hosting Botanical Garden of the Piedmont. And thanks to everyone for your time and your interest today. We truly appreciate the TomTom Foundation's mission. The idea that, quote, building strong communities starts with collaboration and connection, end quote, is in fact a belief that we not only share, but we're working hard to implement in our own way as we build this garden. And you'll be hearing more about that in our discussion today. But first, I'd like to learn a little bit about our participants. So if you could please raise your hand if today is an introduction for you into the garden, that would be great. Excellent. And now, if you could please raise your hand if you've actually been to the garden site. Excellent. So we've got a full range of people here in the knowledge base. So I hope you'll indulge me for a second. I'm going to go back and give a little background for those of you who don't know about the garden. And I'm going to share my screen. Excellent. So up on your screen should be a title of our new garden. Our new name of the garden, Botanical Garden of the Piedmont. Last summer, we invited the public to give us suggestions about what the new name for the garden should be. And we got over 200 responses. We selected Botanical Garden of the Piedmont because it's concise, precise, and inclusive to all people that live within the Central Virginia area. So this name just became official last week. So this is a reminder for me to call the garden by the right name. I'll either be calling it Botanical Garden of the Piedmont or BGP today. But if I screw up, please indulge me for a second. It's a steep learning curve for me. So Botanical Garden of the Piedmont is a public-private partnership. The land's been designated by the city of Charlottesville, but that's where the taxpayer burden ends. All of the funds that are needed to design, construct, and maintain the garden will be privately raised. But once it's built, just like any other city park, the Botanical Garden will be free and accessible to all. This is the mission statement for the garden: to invite all community members and visitors to engage in nature, to educate and inspire through the beauty and importance of plants, to advance sustainability, and promote human and environmental well-being. And below that is our vision. Both the mission statement and the vision were adopted by the board of directors in the past year. Now, I know that botanical gardens have reputations of being outdoor museums where people go to sip tea and look at beautiful plants. But as our mission and vision indicate, the modern botanical garden has evolved, and they are actively embedding themselves in their communities to help deal with urban challenges. And they're doing that by doing things like planting food forests to help with issues of food inequity, creating summer camps and after-school programs to help deal with childcare issues. They partner with senior centers and residential communities to develop programming. They work with schools to develop curricula in botany, biology, sustainability, and stewardship, as well as climate change. And they provide green industry job training programs for at-risk and challenged adults. The garden has completed the first phase of the design, the master plan, with the help of community feedback. And this feedback determined the types of features for the garden, but it also helped to generate the guiding principles about what this garden should be. And those guiding principles included an iconic design that draws people to the site, education that emphasizes indoor and outdoor learning about the environment, flexibility to accommodate different programming, and celebrating and highlighting the diverse community and unique landscape history of Charlottesville. During the master plan process, our design team was inspired to see the symbol for this garden as a nest, one that sits lightly on the land, woven together of natural materials. But we also like the idea of a nest as a place of inclusion, nurturing, stewardship, and growth. Because one of the goals identified by the community during the feedback process is that this garden be a place to bring people of all ages and backgrounds together in a safe and convenient natural outdoor space so that we could get to know one another and help to heal our community. We know that equal access to natural space that feels welcoming to everyone has never been more important. This is the resulting master plan for the garden. It focuses on enhancing the existing ecosystem, and it provides gardens for interactive and immersive learning. But the plan also redefines the idea that botanical gardens are only places to discover botany. Instead, it creates a place to pull a broad audience, and that adds a distinct social overlay. So I am going to get my pointer right now, and I'm going to walk you through the garden. There are quieter, more contemplative spaces, like in the upper right-hand corner where you see my red pointer. This is our flowering grove. And next to it, we have woodland trails. And adjacent to that is our pinetum, which is a collection of native conifer trees. And if you follow me across the creek, we've got a wildflower meadow, and we have fern and moss gardens, as well as mushroom gardens. And then here in the center, we have our contemplation and healing gardens. But we also have active and communal garden areas, like right here next to the creek where we've got an aquatics garden. And at the creek itself, we've got a waterfall that has amphitheater-like seating that's built into the rock walls that the water is going to cascade over. And up at the top of the hill, we have a tree canopy walk, and that will bring you up into the upper limbs of the trees where you can hang out in our bird blind and watch the birds nesting and eating and feeding their young. or you can walk around to our sky viewing platform. And there you can look up at the sky during the day. You'll see the clouds and the pictures that they form, or at night, you can see the constellations. This in the center right here is our Visitor and Education Center. It will house our offices, our meeting rooms, our library and gift shop, a cafe, and catering facilities. The garden spaces adjacent to it will be the most active and populated. And those are our main event green here and our natural outdoor amphitheater. They've been designed to facilitate social interaction and support diverse programming. So they will host events like classes, seasonal celebrations, and performances. And these spaces will be available for rental for private events like weddings and corporate functions, and that will help to support the garden financially. Now we have 2 more design phases ahead of us. So there's lots more opportunity for us to get input from the public about the future garden. So we're thrilled that we've been invited here today to discuss the benefits of the community input into the design of the botanical garden and the benefits of the botanical garden into the community. So I am going to stop sharing my screen now, and it gives me great pleasure to, sorry, technical difficulties. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce my panelists. With me today are Eugene Ryang from Waterstreet Studios, which is one of the design firms working on the Botanical Garden, as well as Aleen Carey and Emmanuel Quezada Romero from Cultivate Charlottesville. Emmanuel is a senior at Charlottesville High School. He's worked with Cultivate Charlottesville and City Schoolyard Gardens since he was in 7th grade. And during his time as a food justice intern, he's worked on collaborative design projects to honor the Charlottesville 12, expand school garden projects at Charlottesville High and Buford Middle Schools, and he presented at the 2019 National Community Food Systems Conference in Savannah, Georgia. Emmanuel is passionate about bringing justice to the food system, which includes designing and building gardens and hands-on work, growing vegetables for the community. Thank you, Emmanuel, for being with us today. Aleen Carey is the Outreach and Resource Program Director at Cultivate Charlottesville. She moved to Charlottesville with her family while in high school. She was a high school Spanish teacher and shared her love of the language, culture, and travel with hundreds of students over a decade. When she left the classroom, Aleen joined the CSG board as a way to stay involved in education. After serving on the board for 6 years, she joined the staff in January of 2020. Aleen has spent the last 5 years honing her skills for relationship building, storytelling, and fundraising. Thank you, Aleen, for joining us today. And Eugene Ryang is a co-founding principal at Waterstreet Studio. He received his master's in landscape architecture and cultural anthropology from UVA and a BA in history from Columbia. His academic background informs a unique understanding of cultural and social connections to physical space, while his craft has fostered a mindfulness of construction details at all stages of the design process. Thank you, Eugene. We're so happy to have you here today. So I'm going to ease into our discussion by asking each of our panelists a few questions. So Aleen and Emmanuel, these ones are for you. Cultivate Charlottesville originated as city schoolyard gardens and grew to fill the gaps of previously unexplored interests in the community. Can you share with us what lessons you learned in the process of growing from City Schoolyard Gardens into Cultivate Charlottesville about the aspirations of the community? And did the students lead or follow in this evolution?
Thank you. I wanted to address, Lindsay put a question in the group chat that said, I hope to learn how to engage community members when designing a common space and how long collecting that insight takes. I think that relates directly to your question, Jill. It takes a while. If you really want input from the community, it takes a while to do focus sessions, to go out to different areas, to try to get people through social media, through flyers, through robocalls. There's a lot of different ways to engage different pieces of the community. And so you have to be able to put time into making sure, especially for a common space that we want everyone in our area to be able to use, that folks who live and work in this area, all kinds of folks are included. It takes a while. So for us, to make that move from being City Schoolyard Garden to Cultivate Charlottesville, which encompasses City Schoolyard Garden, Urban Agriculture Collective, and Food Justice Network, I would say about a period of years. We started talking as a board. We went to the community and said, what do you think? We asked thought leaders who'd been supporting us, donors who had been supporting us, youth leaders who were involved in what we were doing, and spent a lot of time culling that information and then making moves that reflected what those people thought were the best ideas. Now, did that coincide with what some of the staff members thought? Of course, but we really had to take a step back and make sure that we were community focused and community driven, that the voice was not just from the staff, but that people who go to school in this town, who live in public and subsidized housing communities, who are fighting for food justice, that their voices are the ones that carry through. So it takes a while to make that happen. Manny, what would you add? Emmanuel, what would you add?
I would also add, not only did students lead this lead in the the city schoolyard gardens, going into transferring from the city schoolyard gardens towards the Cultivate Charlottesville, but they started it all with just conversations that just led into more discussions that just kept growing. For example, a simple question like, what could we change in school lunches for the better, just went from a simple question, a simple topic, and bloomed into a wide arrays of information and many discussions. Um, we have little from, sorry, workdays have developed. During these times, we have developed and worked on many surveys that we have developed and filled many surveys that have worked on that we have worked on, that we presented to city school board, city council, and worked closely with the director of nutrition of the city schools. We are part of how the interns are a part of how Cultivate has grown.
Well, thank you. Obviously, we need to listen to our children closely because they've got great ideas. Cultivate Charlottesville works with people of all ages and backgrounds, and your work is considered universally successful. So what aspect of your work do you identify as having the most impact in forming your positive outcomes?
I would again say, Jill, making sure that we're amplifying voice of community members. So you mentioned when you introduced me that I am not native to Charlottesville. I've been here for a long time now, but I am not a native Charlottesvillian. So being able to learn from, to go to people who have grown up here, who've seen it change and develop over the years, as well as new folks, everyone who calls Charlottesville home, taking what everybody, to the best of our ability, wants to see, has to share, has experienced, is looking to change, and trying to pull all of those things together has been super important. Again, it's just about community voice. Of course, that includes student voice and amplifying that.
Excellent. Emmanuel?
To add to this discussion is what is the most important aspect of this of work of our work. Everything starts out with a simple conversation, and it just keeps moving on, and we keep trying to push on certain discussions that we enjoy to discuss and those that we don't enjoy to discuss. All continues forward, and we keep going into where we are now, where we're talking to the nutritional director of CCS and any other directors.
Excellent. Emmanuel, don't mute yourself because I have a couple of questions for you. Can you tell us what draws you to a garden and what would draw you even more closely to it?
What draws me to the garden and what draws me closer? What draws me close is food, friends, people, getting my hands dirty, and seeing things grow. Seeing the fruits of my labor as it just as I add on to it.
And what experiences, activities, symbols, or physical elements do you think makes a garden feel like it belongs to the public?
Well, one, physical activities, people come into the gardens and work on them from the community. What allows them to see that everyone has been a part of making and growing gardens, the public gardens. And every bit of conversation, every event has helped the garden grow with knowledge of it or just the enjoyment of it.
Thank you. Eugene, this one's for you. Your website says that active contribution among all disciplines and stakeholders is one of the cornerstones for the success of your projects. And I quote, "We listen, we interpret, and then we create," end quote. Can you tell us how you've invited public input into your projects? How has stakeholder input affected your public projects? And finally, can you describe how you think this input enriched the final product?
Sure, I'll try. That particular quote is specific to our design process. And so I would say in terms of stakeholders, if I were to drop back a little bit, architecture and landscape architecture in general are usually in the realm of a particular client. And I like to call them the elect right now, for just lack of a better word. It's like usually those in power or those who are privileged are the ones who actually can hire architects or landscape architects per se. And when in talking about just stakeholder input, it's usually client input is what we're talking about specifically. So whether it's a committee or folks, oftentimes architects have this reputation wearing, you know, the architect wearing the cape, coming in, telling everyone what the design is all about. That seems a little bit antiquated, but I can tell you it still happens because I've worked in firms like that. And so having seen that experience, you know, part of our process is to, once we do part of our site planning and site analyses first, and then we go in and we establish all the constraints, and then we work and create multiple iterations of a design and then come to the client with multiple options. We don't come with one option and tell the client this is what it is. And so the client, whether it's a committee or individuals, are actively involved in the ownership of their decisions. So that is what that meant in particular in the website. We have had the fortune or the benefit of working on more public projects. We're working with the Charlottesville Housing Redevelopment Authority at South First. We're working currently and more recently at Southwood Community, which is just south of town. It is 100 acres and 1,500 residents, mobile home park, and it's with Habitat, as I just mentioned. And the Habitat mission is really interesting because they want to develop the community with zero displacement of its community members. So this is a different type of clientele. And what's unique is the process still stays the same, with one interesting difference is that where we still do our site analysis and planning, and we start to identify constraints, and by constraints, I mean entitlement constraints, for example, what are required for urban street widths, sidewalk widths, what is the floodplain constraint, what is the steep slope constraint, what are the housing constraints. So with all of that in mind, instead of architects or we going back and coming up with various options to present to the community where they pick through those options, we don't we don't come up with the options. We work with the community to come up with options. So this has been a particularly rewarding, incredibly challenging project. And I didn't even know this, but it's over 2,000 hours has been spent on this, not just from consultants, but from the Habitat members themselves. So with that, in doing so, we create actual hand models and paper doll models, what we call just paper models. And so we're working with different groups and countless charrettes and work sessions where everyone's working, we're photographing, we're filming, we're taking turns speaking in Spanish and English. And that would make the meetings twice as long. And we started wearing headphones with a translator to actually facilitate that process. So I would say in terms of stakeholder involvement, it's a little bit different than the privileged clientele that's typically part of architects and landscape architects versus a different clientele where access. And what I will tell you what's most interesting about this is once you provide constraints on a project or you demystify what's around it, then it's amazing how clear and thoughtful these designs are. These neighborhood planning designs are, they also realize, the clients also realize, and I'm calling the whole Southwood community the clients, that they understand that part of this development, in order to pay for the development, not only the design planning, but the actual implementation, you have to sell a portion of that development to a regular developer. You also have to introduce market rate homes. So with that, even with that added constraint, the development of multifamily housing, single family houses, and green spaces is very clear. It's pretty, it's not what we do is not rocket science, right? We can go to school and have the language and learn the vocabulary and certain design principles, but it's like everyone knows it. They intuitively understand it. So I think for me, what I've learned through all of this is just, again, access in a different way, access to information. So once you provide it, then people can figure it out pretty easily. The starting point is the same. I think you're on mute, Jill.
Thank you. Technical difficulties again. Aleen, BGP is beginning to create environmental and ecological programming. For instance, we've been removing the invasive plants from our site. We have an emphasis on planting native plants, and we've incorporated an educational aspect to our pending stream restoration. How do you suggest the garden become more relevant now before it's built, so we can better explore how it can best serve the entire community when it is built?
Some of the things that you all have already done as far as bringing in the food justice interns, as you invited them to come to the site over the summer and take a private tour and give feedback to you all about what they liked, what they would change, what they still had questions about. I think, and Manny has spoken about this, Emmanuel has spoken about this many times, the space is right next to Charlottesville High School. So you know that students are already curious and will be more and more curious as the building develops. And so making it easy and accessible for students to participate, to benefit, and to give input ahead of time. I think when you're talking about a space, a project, anything being used or accessible to an entire group of people, if folks aren't part of the process of developing it, then it feels kind of thrown on at the end. So having a discussion like this today where people can give you feedback, having discussions at different times of day, different locations in the city or around the central part of the state, so that you're hearing from different people. So for most of the people on the conversation today, most people look a little bit the same. If you want different voices, you've got to go to different places and recruit different people to give you their input, bringing more people in. I saw that the new signs are up over there. So I feel like as people are driving by now, they're going to say, huh, okay, that's a new sign. What's going on over there? So anything that you can do to get people feeling interested, but also making it accessible and giving folks the feeling that their thoughts, their opinions and suggestions are really going into what's being done. And I think that Emmanuel would agree, the students really felt like you all gave them a chance to be a part of something. I know other people in the community want to feel that way as well.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to bring you all together now for a conversation. This discussion is a great opportunity to explore the intrinsic social responsibility required in the design and construction of a modern public garden. The aesthetics of the building and the gardens are really important because they both communicate the importance of beauty. In addition, the garden symbolizes abundance and how extraordinary the natural world is. And the architecture initiates and reinforces the experience of wonder and immersion, but it can also speak a language all of its own. However, in both cases, we need to be sensitive to the prevailing issues of the day. So here's my first question. What about physical design and architecture makes it feel inclusive or exclusive? Who'd like to take that one on? Emmanuel?
All right. Multiple things in one place allows inclusivity. Like, for example, there's many different environments, many different factors in this botanical garden that is unique, that draws many different people for different reasons. They're not all the same reason that everyone goes there, but that doesn't mean no one can enjoy the other things. It's just that they're brought in by one specific thing of the garden. Uh, One thing that I would say is bus stops. It would be more inclusive if it was more accessible to the public through public transportation, or if possible, in any way possible.
Would either, go ahead, sorry.
I say Eugene goes next. You said the word architecture, and so I have to defer to him. Wait,
Eugene, are you muted?
Oh yeah, I was saying I like what Emmanuel said, because that's exactly what I was thinking. Because typically, again, when you think of arboretums or botanical gardens, it's always something that you have to pay for entry. And the fact that this is a public garden is what's unusual to me. And having worked on several arboretums and botanical gardens, that it is volunteer focused. And the fact that what Emmanuel said in terms of public transportation, I'm talking about just, it's not only emotional and intellectual access, but we're talking about physical access. And I know there's discussions within the community, the larger Parks and Rec, potentially of taking some of these abandoned, at least one of the abandoned railroad areas up, next to Bodos, and maybe making that accessible. So you're bringing all these different paths and greenways that have access to the botanical garden and the larger park as a whole. So I don't, even though the term architecture is part of it, it's, to me, it just has to do with simple access and the fact that it's free.
Do you want to add anything to this one?
I'll leave it at that now.
Okay.
Thanks.
My next question, what of your experiences might enrich the plans for this garden? Emmanuel?
May I go?
Yes, please.
The first time I went there, it was with the other interns through a private tour with Jill and board members. Through experiencing the garden, it was nice. So nice, and the thought of what it could bring to the community thought gave me like the idea. If I had time, I would definitely volunteer here. It's a great experience, and I hope people in the future can enjoy it. People from outside can ha- can go outside and enjoy it, can visit and see what has been done. At first, I was skeptical because we didn't see much of it as the time went on, but as I went to visit through that private tour, I got to see, yes, there has been development, there has been work on this system. It's just not, it's just the small things that add up slowly until we get to the final product.
I would echo, I was with Emmanuel and the other food justice interns when we took the tour. BGP was nice enough to offer us on a Saturday in the heat to come and just explore a little bit. And as Emmanuel said, having driven by before and thinking, oh, that's going to be the botanical garden, but not really knowing what that was going to look like, what that was going to mean, the different pieces that were going into it, the waterfall, the amphitheater, those kinds of things. So getting that tour really opened my eyes to the kind of space it is going to be and the opportunity for the entire community to really have a space that they love and that people can use. So I know, as Jill mentioned, there's still a couple of design phases to go through, but what we've seen is, or planning phases, I should say, not design, but planning phases. But the design itself once you get in there, from seeing it on paper to walking around, and also just seeing some of the work that has already been done to remove the invasive species and things like that, that gets you pumped and excited. We did have popsicles that day as well, so it helped, you know, to have a popsicle while we were walking around. But when you really get to hear about all of the things that have already happened, then you are, you know, feeling like, okay, I can see exactly where this waterfall is going to be. I, you know, can see what it's going to look like to have this grove here. And so just kind of carrying that excitement over to other people. Of course, people who have signed up today are going to be a little bit excited about it, you know, after our presentation, and we'll probably want to learn more about that. That's something we want the rest of the community to really feel as well, and have that opportunity to say, I was there before it was even built. I remember when this was just, you know, this, and now it's this great big thing. For someone to get involved now and then maybe have a wedding there, you know, that kind of opportunity lends itself for a lot of great community memories as well. So I think that once people have more hands-on, pun intended, experience with it, that the excitement will grow.
Okay, I have
Hey,
one
Aleen,
final, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go
I was
ahead.
just going to add just quickly onto dovetailing onto what Aleen said, is that what's also interesting about this site, and Jill could probably tell you a little bit more about it. It is pretty much a derelict site for the city. I mean, it was used for a dumping ground for a long time. So the transformation is going to be really palpable, especially, as you said, for those who can volunteer early to see that transformation into maybe a little bit, maybe for their kids to have a wedding in that park. So I think that's a really good point.
Okay, I have one more big question, but we have to go quickly because we're going to be breaking out into breakout rooms for soon. How do you think we, the garden, can contribute to the thought and design of the 21st century public garden that's concerned with equity, the environment, and empathy?
I hear you talking about equity, empathy. What was one of the other?
The environment.
When you talk about equity in the environment, environmental justice, there are a lot of folks in town who don't have easy access to green space. When you look at Southwood, which is being redeveloped, as Eugene mentioned, South First Street, Friendship Court, those spaces that are being redeveloped, some of them have had some green space, and in thinking about what kind of green space and access folks will have to that, you know, land of their own, it makes a place like the Botanical Garden very important as well, that people can go there, feel welcomed there, feel like they're a part of it, feel like it's an easy place to get to, so that they can have a place that belongs to them as it belongs to the entire public, and kind of and relax. And so the equity piece, again, talking to the different neighborhoods and different folks who live in our city now, and making sure that people are involved now, is going to be a big piece of making sure that people feel like the space belongs to them down the road. And again, for environmental pieces, you know, we need that green space. Green space for all has a pretty serious effect on health. One of the questions that came up in the chat was about how the Botanical Garden will promote promote health and wellness, and having a place that folks can access, a green space that people can play and sit and get together. For some people who don't have that in their home neighborhoods is a very big deal.
I'm just going to add to what Aleen said in terms of like the public space, or access to public space, is so critically important. I live south of town in the Fry Spring neighborhood, and in Azalea, usually take a walk just for a long time with the dogs down at Azalea Park. And they have community gardens there, and they're mostly now, I mean, I had a garden there probably 20 years ago. Now it's really a lot of IRC community that have the gardens on both sides. It's a really interesting juxtaposition, because on the right side of the creek is like a lot of the African community, and on the left side of the creek is a lot of the Central Asian community. But I was just thinking as I see it, because you see the incredible garden spaces that these folks create. I mean, incredible, with like their own shelter systems and their paths and like raised paths, and the fencing using all these recycled materials. But what makes me think about, what Aleen said, a lot of times people go there to meet other community folks, but I also think that depending on where you're from, and especially with the IRC community, because we have some friends that we pick them up for soccer, and they're in multifamily housing. And so there's a lot of people packed into tight housing. So when they have their own space, like the garden space for themselves, they create something beautiful for themselves. And they spend their entire summer, like you go in the summertime or the spring and the fall, all the families are there. It's like they have land to actually occupy, beautify, and make it their own. And so the Botanical Garden, it gives them is another place. They won't be able to appropriate it, but they can come volunteer and help. But I think it's a space outside of their everyday tight living situations that a lot of people probably in this meeting right now don't actually have to endure.
Awesome. Thank you, panel, so much for all your reflections. I'm just grabbing the mic here because we only have a few short minutes left in the hour that you all signed up to participate. I'm putting a survey link in the chat right now. Oh, actually, Alex, my colleague, just grabbed it. I'm seeing a lot of ideas pop up in the chat, and we really want to capture those, right? We've been talking about community input and how that can lead to an inclusive and thriving garden space. So we really want to capture those ideas so we can include them in how the garden grows. So please open that link. It's a Google form. It should be pretty easy. There's a couple questions in it. And we want to take just 5 or 6 minutes here to put you into breakout rooms. And what we hope is that link with the questions can help guide just a real brief conversation about any interesting ideas that you've heard from the panel here today, and then any ideas that you might have upon reflection with some community members and things that you would like to share. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had some great conversations. If you missed the link to the survey, I'm putting it in the chat one more time. We encourage you to fill that out again with your ideas and contributions.
I wanted to take this opportunity to, number one, thank our panelists, because I know Emmanuel is going to have to leave in a second. And I am just so grateful that that all three of them could join us today for this conversation. I also wanted to address the question that was in the chat box about how the garden is going to help with well-being and health. And we know, because of the past year, how important access to nature is to health and well-being. In fact, as a result of the fact that we were seeing far more people utilizing the garden site because of the stress of the COVID pandemic, we met with our community partners, especially those who deal with issues concerning mental health or work with children, to find out how to improve the site so that they could use it now to provide some of their services, especially because a lot of their indoor facilities don't meet COVID standards. So we improved the site as per their feedback. We created areas for seating, for individuals, seating along the trails, as well as small gathering areas. And they're available to members of the public. Even when the garden gate is closed, the site is open. Also, in September, we're offering a lectureship series about public space, especially gardens, and health, how it impacts the health of an individual, how it impacts the health of a community, and how landscape and health are a reciprocal relationship, and therefore we have a responsibility for healing nature. So I hope you can join us then. Also, in addition to the survey that Ben shared with you, we have another survey on our website, on the homepage of our new website, piedmontgarden.org. Your preferences for features and programs helps to ensure the garden is relevant and welcoming to all. So please go to it and share it with this link with your friends, families, and neighbors. The more feedback we can get, the better this garden will be. So now Ben's going to take it from here to talk to you about what you discussed in your breakout rooms.
That's right. Yeah, thank you, Jill. I just did want to recognize that it's almost 1, so if you need to leave, please feel free. But we did want to offer this space now. If you had any additional questions for the panelists that spoke today, feel free to ask those. Or if you wanted to share a reflection from your small group and invite commentary from your other community members, that would be encouraged as well.
Hey, I'll jump in if that's all right. One thing that we found in our small room is that a couple of us are not actively involved with the botanical garden right now, but we are neighbors to the garden in a way. And so we're passing by the signs and seeing the progress, which I think may just be sort of a testament to how important it is just to get word out and to bring people there physically. I didn't have to do any research really to know that it was going on. And I'm sure there are a lot of folks in our region who don't have that same access and the opportunities to see it. So really just kind of underlining some of the points that the panelists brought up about simply making it known as a resource to people.
To that end, I want to say, tell your friends, all the neighbors, tell your friends to come and visit.
Don't you have regular times in which you have work days at the garden? And if so, when would that be?
From the months of March through December, on the 1st and 3rd Wednesday of the month from 10 to 12, we have our Garden Guardian Days. And to be a volunteer with the garden, go to our new website, piedmontgarden.org, and sign up on our volunteer application. And then you'll get all the information about not just the Garden Guardians, but as all the other volunteer opportunities that we have. For instance, the survey that I was just telling you about on our website is in English. We will be posting a Spanish survey soon, and we're looking to be able to offer it in other languages. So we are looking for people that have language skills in other languages. So if you could, apply for as a volunteer and indicate that you have language skills, that would be fantastic.
I want to add too that if you contact Jill or contact me through our website, we're happy to give tours of the garden to 2 or 3 folks, or if you have a small group of friends that would like to see what's going on. And also the gate is closed when we're not there, but you can certainly get in. Just park on Melbourne Road and follow the trails. There will soon be a kiosk there for everybody to find their way.
And I'm also offering virtual presentations to groups, so please feel free to contact me about that as well.
I would love to add that Anne is very easy to work with if you want to give money. They need money, and we need to put our money where our values are. So I really appreciate and echo all the sentiment for inclusivity, making it accessible, bringing healing along racial, ethnic, all kinds of different divides within Charlottesville. So I really applaud that effort. and hope that people will support you financially.
Thank you, Lisa.
It's really important for our children too. I have 2 boys, so we're hoping to help them think inclusively, and I think the spaces around them really remind them that our community wants to be intentional about including different perspectives and valuing difference.
Are there any plans to have like memorial features there of any description?
We already have a number of funds for memorial features in the garden. And so we will be continuing to build on those as we grow the funds to build the garden.
Can you say what those are, the memorials?
Sure. Martha, I think what you're asking about is if you could make a purchase in someone's name as a memorial. Is that correct? Really, is that what you're interested in? We don't really have a list as of yet of what those features are going to be.
I wasn't so much thinking of that as I was just remembering there was a thing in Charlottesville a 3 years ago about bridge builders, which were both African-American and white people that had contributed to drawing the community together interracially. And so, you know, if things like that might accomplish some of these inclusive goals that you have, which I applaud.
Right now, the funds that we have are in memory of people that their friends and families have donated money to a fund to specifically build a feature in the garden in their honor or memory.
So this is a great way for me to spend a little bit of the Trump stimulus check. I want to give it to all those in need, especially immigrants and African Americans and this garden.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha.
I would like to thank again Aleen, Emmanuel, and Eugene for joining me and for their thoughtful insights, and thank the TomTom Foundation for hosting us for this discussion. And thanks all of you for your time and thoughtful participation today. I really look forward to the opportunity of seeing you all at the Botanical Garden of the Piedmont very soon.